The question in Louisiana is, will it catch Mary Landrieu? Will the negatives catch Mary Landrieu, particularly as vocal as she's been about it? Politically, Jeff and I would have told her, look, if you got to vote for it, but quit beating the bushes so much for it. Just shut up. And she's not done so. So I think that 10 years from now, we're still going to have the remnants of this program, no matter who gets elected or not elected. The political question is, will the backlash carry Landrieu in the 2014 election, and will that backlash actually make the difference in her getting defeated? That's kind of how I see the whole thing.
I think, Jim, you're right. Mary Landrieu is going to be having a tough time. Obamacare, I mean, they're already pouring big-time money into Louisiana, pounding her on Obamacare. That seems to be her biggest liability, even though she has voted with the president on other issues that are unpopular. But Obamacare is number one. So I do think it winds up really hurting her. I don't know whether it's going to cost her her seat, because, of course, the Republicans have a knack for losing elections that they should win. I do think that it's certainly going to make it a lot closer. And as far as around the nation, yeah, we're stuck with it right now. As far as what happens in 2014, if the Republicans can take control of the Senate, then I think maybe you can see possibly some more changes occurring. I don't see this thing ever being repealed until, of course, there's a Republican president and a Republican Congress, and I don't know what the prospects for that are going to be in 2016. So you're right. We're stuck with this. I guess the problems can be mitigated in some manner, and that's got to be what the opponents try to do.
I want to point this out to all you get a lot of young people that watch this show here on Bayou Buzz, and I want to make this point that, you know, I'm a libertarian, I'm an independent now. I don't like either party, quite frankly, and I want to point out the hypocrisy of the thing. If you go back to 15 years ago, the biggest pushers of the individual mandate, which is the guts of Obamacare, were Republicans. Newt Gingrich, the Heritage Foundation. I can go right down the line with you in terms of those who supported this mandate that is the nuts and bolts of Obamacare. So I just think it's kind of amusing that die-hard Republican conservatives conceived the idea, but the minute Obama got elected, all of a sudden it's just this horrible program. Now, I don't like the program. I wouldn't have voted for it when the Republicans proposed it, and I wouldn't have voted for it today. I don't like the program as someone that knows insurance. But I just think it shows you again what's going on in Washington, D.C. You know, if the other side proposes it, it's bad. Not only is it bad, it's evil, and you pound those guys and beat it. If it's a Republican idea, Democrats hate it. Democrats' idea, they hate it. And that is something that is just really polarizing this country today.
No, I would say that at least the conservatives, the majority of them, I think, have been consistently opposed to this ever since Hillary Clinton proposed it back in '93.
I just see the hypocrisy on both sides, not just Democrats, not Republicans. I think it's unfortunate. It is a sign of what's happening in the nation's capital today on all these issues. And so and that may have an effect, quite frankly. You know, you can make an argument that the throw the bums out argument had an effect in the 5th Congressional District, where McAllister was elected congressman. Neil Reiser was for all the young senator that was running up there in northeast Louisiana, effectively became the incumbent. He had the shroud of incumbency. He had the governor for him. He had all the elected officials for him, and he got overwhelmingly shellacked. So that may be a sign of a backlash going against incumbency and those in Washington, D.C. Doesn't really affect the Senate race because you've got Bill Cassidy, the congressman up my way in Baton Rouge, running against Mary Landrieu, both pretty much incumbents. Interesting guy in that race is this fellow Colonel Manus, who is the more the Tea Party candidate. He's pretty logical, makes a lot of sense, very attractive candidate. It's just that in this day and age, the way the parties are so proliferating, he can't raise the money, in my opinion. He needs to go ahead and get elected. So interesting dynamics going on in terms of how incumbency will affect many of these races throughout. That it's kind of interesting that the first major election after so much of this controversy was this 5th district race with McAllister winning, kind of running against the establishment. Poor Neil Reiser, who is the senator in the area that I used to represent as a senator, he got shrouded as the incumbent. He was, for all practical purposes, the incumbent, endorsed by all the congressional delegation, endorsed right down the line by every key Republican in the state, raised money from national Republicans, yet was just shellacked, not just beaten 60-40. I'm just interested to see if that's going to be somewhat of a sign in terms of other races in Louisiana and throughout the country when incumbents try to defend their turf, having been in Washington and not really done very much and being so unpopular. Will that have an effect on other Republican races, other races for both Democrats and Republicans throughout the country?
Jeff, your response?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think you had an interesting dynamic there. You had Duck Dynasty supporting this sort of newcomer. You had Clyde Holloway, who's a very conservative public service commissioner. And then you had, you know, a lot of strong black support. He had an interesting coalition, but I think what his major advantage was he's a newcomer. And I think people are sort of tired of the politicians in both parties and are looking for something fresh. And I think he tapped into that. Of course, you know, it was a blow to the governor. It was a blow to all those politicos that had lined up behind Reiser. And I think it sent a message to at least a lot of the mainstream Republicans that they can't pull this kind of thing off in the future. And, you know, I think it's a refreshing sign. I was excited that this guy won, and I'm glad he has never been to Washington. I'm glad he is totally fresh, and I'm glad he put a unique coalition together. I think it's a very positive development.
Which means, Steve, in the U.S. Senate race, that's kind of interesting. You know, the problem is how do you raise the money? But McAllister in the 5th district up in northeast Louisiana put some $800,000 of his own money in it. So that makes you a very formidable candidate under these circumstances. The U.S. Senate race, that whole issue could be exploited against both parties if a well-financed independent or someone like Manus who has the money. But if you had the money, you could probably run a pretty aggressive race against both the incumbents, Mary Landrieu and the challenger, Congressman Bill Cassidy. The problem is right now no one's on the scene that can individually finance such a race. But if they could, it'd be really a fun race to watch because you'd kind of pit the newcomer against both parties to see how all that played out.
Let me just throw some out to you, and then we'll move on to the U.S. Senate race. And that is that we've been operating under the assumption that Louisiana is not going to be supporting Obamacare. And there's certainly for that. I mean, without doubt, Louisiana, all the polls have shown now for years, the last, 3 years, that they're just totally against the Affordable Care Act. And after the website, of course, failure, you know, who could support it? But now there's I think becoming a sea change, at least a wave change, if not a sea change. The site is up, so you can begin to understand what your options are. I mean, you can just begin to understand. I'm not sure. I mean, I hear reports that the information is the computer information is googly got on the insurance side, and hopefully they'll take care of that. I'm not so sure that all that's true, but you know, we'll have to see. But you know, the thing is that premiums, from what I can see, and I've done a whole bunch of investigation, premiums are not going up that much, at least in Louisiana, for those people who can get insurance. In addition to that, you have all kind of options, and the insurance commissioner, and Jeff, I mean Jim, you might have some input on this. The insurance commissioner has come out saying, okay, fine, you can keep your policy for a year. And so now you have people getting used to the insurance. Things, the sky hasn't fallen, and they have affordable, at least they can get insurance despite pre-existing conditions. And in addition to that, they don't have any caps. And it just seems to me that all heck is going to break loose if other states, say blue states, who have actually accepted the Medicaid expansion, if they seem to do much better on health care than Louisiana, which is already in the dump hole as far as I'm concerned in terms of health care. So I'm just throwing it out to you. I think that you know, sometimes history can change. That's a lot of assumptions that I'm throwing out, but they're not totally unrealistic assumptions. Anyway, go ahead, please.
Well, from the insurance perspective, as Jeff and I think both agree, this is a complicated issue, and there's no one-size-fits-all. I'm over 65, so I get Medicare, and Medicare works pretty good for me, and so Obamacare doesn't really affect my life in any way. I've got the other program, and we're a state that has a higher percentage of older citizens in Louisiana. We've got, I think, the highest percentage of citizens over 65 in the country. If you've got Medicare, you don't really care about Obamacare. The Medicaid program works okay for some people. If you're a state employee or a public employee, you've got your own insurance. So you got to understand, we're not talking about everybody in the state. We're talking about maybe 40% of the population, and each of and many of those people are scurrying to get some kind of insurance. They want something. If Obamacare is the only game in town, they're going to go ahead and at least explore it, even though they don't like it. So it's a complicated issue that is going to affect some in ways different from others, and as a consequence, it's hard to focus one form of opposition. Steve, I think you're right. You may not like it. You're going to get on it. If you have no other insurance choices, you're going to get on the computer and try to say, hey, does this work for me? What's it going to cost? So we're going to be fighting this battle for some time to come, but I just don't think it's going to go away. The big problem is if you don't work for a company, you're a young person, or you have your own business, you've got to get on that computer and see whether or not you can work out some semblance of something that works for you. And for some people, it's going to be a lot more difficult. But if you've got a pre-existing condition, you're right, Steve, it's probably going to be an option that you don't have right now. So we're going to wheel through this whole thing over the next year and let it all settle down. There are some extensions, as you pointed out, by the insurance commissioner and by the president. So this thing has a long time to play out. And what the focus is, will it be a major issue and have an effect on some of the coming elections, particularly the U.S. Senate race right here in Louisiana?